everyone. I have another message off of you through YouTube. This one again is about 7 months old, so I'm sorry it's so late to respond. This comes in from Uday. I realize I am the victim of child abuse of a different kind, the narcissistic abuse by my own parents. I have been essentially conned by my parents into thinking I am fit for nothing, and so many of them do that to us, and that's by design. They want you to think you can do nothing. That way they can be a part of your life forever, where you're under the belief in your own mind that you can't live without these people. You need these people as some sort of safety net. They just want to keep me as their slave for a lifetime. As I said, indentured servitude. I wish I had come to know about this earlier, because now I feel that I have just wasted so much of my time and energy into trying to get a grip on my condition. But how could I have possibly seen through it? They are such brilliant con artists. And how could I, as a child, come to terms with the fact that my parents are some sort of sick child abusers? But now everything is clear to me thanks to YouTube and people like you sharing your experience through it. And that's another thing I've said so many times, that that anger and that resentment that you feel for the wasted years of thinking you were the problem and not understanding what was happening to you, and thinking you're the only person that's ever gone through this, and that you are some sort of a bad anomaly in the world. And then you realize that, oh my God, look at all the people that have gone through this, as you learn about these things through YouTube and hear other people's stories. Their modus operandi, smear campaign, gaslighting, triangulation, isolation, is very clear now that I have learned a lot from it. They are really sick bastards, along with my brother, who is playing along the golden child for their favors and inheritance. And like I said, a lot of times it's money, it's an inheritance that keeps the enabler, a golden child, engaged and motivates them to abuse you. He has reached the point of no return, I think. And what it means is that his son is also destined to become a narcissist too, carrying on with the vicious cycle of abuse until he realizes it and gets out of it. I was shocked to see that his school-going son had started to belittle my 5-year-old son for silly things. My brother has already trained him to play the role of a golden child and trying to turn my son into a scapegoat at such a young age. Both me and my brother have only one child each. And I noticed that too, because, and I believe I've told this story of my second oldest cousin. And something very briefly I realized, and I talked about this competition my father, Normus, had with, my father's the oldest of 5 children. Him and his brother were born first, and then the middle child is his sister, Adrienne. And I said, I think in other videos, that my father's behavior has been a narcissistic for battle of control, which he's been losing, of his side of the family, between him and his oldest sister, Adrienne, who is who's another, typical narcissist, and her own kids can't stand her. But when I was a kid, very young, me being the oldest of all the cousins, the second was her oldest son, and he used to pick on me horribly because he was bigger than me. I was always I was a small kid, like I'm small now. I was meant to be, a tiny guy. But he used to pick on me horribly, until one day my mother had enough of it, and even his father had enough of it, and they said, take him in his room and kick his fucking ass. And that's what I did. He came in, I'm like, hey, I waited in his room, and it was this orange toy with these Sesame Street pop-ups. And I waited for him to call them, waited for him to come in. As soon as he walked through the door, I smacked him with this thing across his back, and he went down. And I shut the door, and I remember they had these white doorknobs with these push-button locks, and locked the door. And I think I must have spent 5 to 10 minutes kicking the dog shit out of him. Kicking the dog shit out of him in his room. And so like they were banging on the door. And finally when my mother's like, okay, you can let him up now. And I know she got some kind of sick pleasure out of this. But it was, again, the siblings of the narcissist will pick on your children if you're the black sheep. And that's something that happens. So that's a quick story of something I dealt with. My sister-in-law, who was a normal person and a victim of abuse until years ago, is also getting transformed into a narcissistic enabler for my brother these days, which is typical because you're either going to fight back and leave, or you're going to coalesce and become part of the narcissistic abuse. After experiencing the devastating effect of narcissistic abuse on one's psyche, I feel sorry for the whole family, especially my sister-in-law and nephew, who are being conned into a vicious cycle and they don't know what they're getting themselves into. At this point, your sister-in-law knows what she's getting herself into. She's making a choice to go along with it because it's the easier choice. And it sounds like there's some money in your family, so that could be part of the motivation as well. If your brother who's an abuser is hanging on for the money, so is she. So be careful giving her too much sympathy, because at this point she's making a choice. I now realize the source for all my behavioral problems in the past. The veil has been lifted from my mind, and my mind is now free. Now I have to figure out ways to achieve something in my career and become financially independent. I realize there is no point in confronting the narcissist about this issue. I have already done that mistake a few years back and seen its consequence. It's better to leave them to their own devices. Best way of revenge is to ignore them and rob them of their main source of supply, me. Exactly. The best way to get after the narcissist is to cut them off and never look back, because then they're not going to get their supply, and then they're going to turn their rage onto their golden children, with the effect that somehow it's going to get back to you to draw you back in. Don't fall for it. A few years back, I had gone no contact with my parents for about a year or so after the confrontation, and during that time, my father's health deteriorated a lot. He lost a lot of weight and developed epilepsy. I think his epileptic condition and weight loss could be the result of his losing his major source of supply. I don't know if epilepsy is brought on like that. Maybe. I mean, I'd have to research it, but I'd also question if his epilepsy is real, if it's something he was doing for sympathy in order to get attention. So I don't know. You would have to know better. You would know better than I would, but I never heard of epilepsy being brought on by stress of something. Sounds to me more like he's a con artist, like you said, and faking a medical condition. His condition brought sympathy to me, and I started speaking to him, even accompanied him to hospital visits. And suddenly his health started to improve, and especially his weight. And of course, he went back to his old habit of belittling me in front of my brother. He is still on medication for epilepsy. I really do question whether or not your father's a real epileptic or he was just putting this on. The fact that he got medication for it, you know, the medical profession is fucked up. You know, they're there to push big pharmaceuticals. So if your father's insured, which I'm sure he is, and they're bilking an insurance company, they don't care if they're giving him anti-epilepsy medication. You know, he might be a real epileptic, but I seriously question that. I had known since childhood that my father had problems growing up, since with a foster mom and stepbrother and an indifferent father, but I just didn't realize that he could be so sick as to emotionally abuse his own children and grandchildren and get high from watching the misery, helplessness, frustration of his children and grandchildren. It really is sick beyond words and a big blow to me. I have been deluding myself that my parents and brother really care for me, but the truth is far from it. I am realizing this after 35 years of being emotionally manipulated. I wonder how many times my father and brother must have got high watching my helplessness, and to think my mother was helping them achieve this. It is sick, disgusting, and devastating. Thank God I realized this at least now. I can save my own wife and kid from this malady. I don't know that word. I'm pretty smart, I think, but I think it's a bad thing. Oh, malady. Duh. Okay. Malady. Good word. Good word. You don't see it that much. I guess that's why it didn't register with me right away. But what you were saying is, yeah, basically your father's taking revenge on you for his own messed up childhood, which is horrible because it's like I said, at some point these narcissistic abusers make a choice between right and wrong. He knows how his childhood affected him. But instead of doing the right thing and being a better father, he's like, no, I'm going to seek out my revenge on my own family. That's sad. That's really sad. But it happens all too often. It was my wife who was smart enough to see through their web of lies and deceit and kept warning me about it, but I just couldn't come to terms with it for a long time. I have been married for 8 years now, and it is only now that I realize how right my wife's judgment was all this time. At one point, my father tried to cause triangulation between me and my wife, and I almost fell for it. I ended up accusing my wife for doing politics in my family, but luckily my wife was patient enough to let me come to my senses. I realized the truth only after almost losing my mind. And, you know, that's okay. I am happy to see so many people are sharing stories here. It has been a great learning experience for me. Thanks a lot for the videos. Take care. Regards, Uday. And that is something that, you know, when you get somebody in your life like a spouse who isn't a narcissist and comes from a normal family and they see it, you know, you don't necessarily understand what they're doing and what's going on, but the family will absolutely turn on that person and absolutely hate them. But it's good you were able to see that she was right, that she was seeing these people for who they were, and she gave you the space to let you kind of see it on your own. And it's good that you came along and did see it on your own. So give yourself credit for that. You know, she saw them as liars. Like some people can clue in onto these narcissists and know and like, And I talked about that in an older video I did where I talked about my friend's parents who saw right through my parents and stood up to them on my behalf one time. So like when you get people like that in your life, you want to make sure you keep them around. You're lucky enough to have married one. But you know, it's a very telling story. I think it's going to help a lot of people. Another example of things we've all dealt with and the tactics these narcissists will use in order to control. So thank you for your message. I really appreciate it. And I hope this helped out, you know, some other people, whoever's watching. So thank you very much. And again, if you like this channel, you want to see it grow, and you want to support this channel, please consider donating to the GoFundMe link in the description box. And remember, any donation you make, if you want your story out there, I will immediately make my next video, you know, for you and give you my opinion if you want it. That's why everybody's sending the messages, I think, to begin with. So if you do donate, you know, you get your video made very quickly. Seems like everybody's happy with the videos I've made for them. So something to consider. If you can't donate, please share the link wherever you can. This is Ollie Matthews. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all again shortly. Thanks. Bye.